Do you like the content? I feel like I'm saying that every time. Anyway, we would love for you to subscribe. Every YouTuber tells me that it's annoying, but it gets results if you keep asking. So subscribe. Please subscribe. Welcome to Raging Moderates. I'm Jessica Tarlov, and today we're joined by the top Democrat on the House Intelligence Committee, Congressman Jim Himes of Connecticut. It's just out of a classified briefing on the most controversial U.S. strikes of the year. Congressman, thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me.
So I saw a clip of you straight out of the briefing where you said that it was one of the most troubling things you've seen in public service at the highest level. And I know you can't tell us everything. What did you see in that room that triggered that reaction?
Well, and I mean, just to give you some context here, I've been doing work on the Intelligence Committee for a very long time. So, reviewing these videos of lethal action is not a novel thing for me. But yeah, I'd never seen anything quite like this for a couple of reasons. Number one, oftentimes the activity is going after terrorists, as the American public is aware. Al-Qaeda and ISIS are people who, take down buildings on 9/11, who daily are plotting to kill innocent Americans. The individuals I saw in this video were folks that had been hired on the beaches of Venezuela to run a boat up to Trinidad. And shame on them. The drug business is a dirty business, and that's a bad decision. But this is not Pablo Escobar. These are a couple of guys. And this was a strike on September 2nd in which a very large munition had basically incinerated the boat. And remarkably, there were two survivors that I suspect were probably blown away from the boat, and probably the only way they survived. And we watched those survivors for a period of several hours while they basically clung to the wreckage of their boat. They had no weapons. They had no tools of any kind. Under the laws of war and the Pentagon's manual for the laws of war, it is a requirement that you not attack people. The term is hors de combat, who have been removed from their ability to conduct hostilities. That is very clear. And in fact, in the Pentagon's manual, the example given is that you won't attack a shipwrecked sailor. And a shipwrecked sailor is somebody who is defined as being incapable of combat. These guys weren't capable of anything, much less hostilities. And we watched them for a very long time. And then we killed them. And the Pentagon made a whole series of arguments about how, well, they might have been rescued. They might have been able to get the cocaine that maybe was underneath the boat. They might have been able to get back into the fight. None of that holds water, right? And this, to me, feels like episodes in World War II where Japanese naval forces machine gunned sailors in the water in lifeboats. They probably thought our sailors were bad people too. But the point is that they had been removed from their ability to pose a threat to forces. That was the situation of these two individuals, and the decision was taken to kill them. And that is just not at all consistent with the laws of war, with Pentagon policy, or with the values that the American people hold.
Yeah. So Admiral Bradley, who was testifying, has a stellar reputation on the right and the left. I know that you've spoken to that as well. I saw from reporting that he said that there was no order from Secretary Hegseth to, quote, kill them all. Is that correct?
That is correct. The Admiral said that there was no order to kill them all, or in the parlance of the military, to not offer quarter. Which is good, because an order to kill them all is by definition an illegal order. So I wasn't entirely shocked to learn that in fact, the Washington Post reported it, that in fact was not true.
Okay. And I've seen as well that the right is kind of clinging to this narrative, which you've already refuted to some degree, that because these folks were still alive and got back onto the boat and might have been in communication with someone else, that they still posed a threat to us. Do you think that they're going to continue using that as the argument as to why all of this is fine by our standards? Or where do you think it goes from here? Because I saw Senator Tom Cotton saying he thinks everything is hunky-dory after his briefing and that he would have authorized the same actions.
Well, again, I just hope the American people have an opportunity to look at this, because even the question you asked, there was no boat. This boat had now received at this point in time, some of the most sophisticated munitions the United States can drop. And this is not a big boat. This is not an aircraft carrier. This is a skiff. So there's no boat, there is wreckage, and there is no radio, there is no tool, there is no technology. These individuals, if they had an AK-47 And if they had a radio, and if we knew that they were radioing for help and said, come pick up the cocaine, I might be willing to entertain the notion that, as you say, the right is saying. They were not on a boat. They were on flotsam. They had no tools of any kind. They had no weapons. They had not issued a plea to anybody to come recover cocaine. So, look, I'm not at all surprised that the right is making this argument. Donald Trump and Pete Hegseth, in the minds and the eyes of my Republican colleagues, can do no wrong. Not surprising. But again, this is why the American people need to see this video.
Do you think that's going to happen?
I don't know. You know, this is really primarily an issue for the Armed Services Committee. I do intelligence work, but the reason I feel strongly about this is that, you know, the American people would be forgiven for being very aggressive and maybe even being willing to tolerate, you know, the destruction of civilians in boats that are bringing cocaine, not fentanyl, by the way, but cocaine into the United States. But I really think the American people need to see what that means and who it is that we're talking about here, and the mismatch between the technology and the willing to make every spectacular assumption to justify what we would condemn in any other context. I said to the Admiral today, because I was really shaken by what I saw, if the two individuals on this wreckage had been American sailors in the Persian Gulf, and the video had been taken and the actions had been taken by the Iranian Republican Guard, the United States would be at war today, righteously so. And that's, again, why I think it's really important for the American people to see this video. It was the first strike, the aftermath of the first strike, and then the lethal strike on the survivors.
So the other big story revolving around Pete Hegseth is the IG report from so-called Signalgate that came out, 84 pages long. I know that you've reviewed it. I just wanted to make sure that I got this quote in there from the review. The secretary's actions created a risk to operational security that could have resulted in failed U.S. mission objectives and potential harm to U.S. pilots. Sounds pretty serious to me. What are your thoughts on the report?
Well, do you remember when the incident happened and the explanation, because you were asking me about what the right is saying and, you know, how the White House is defending this. If you rewind the tape to when Signalgate happened, it was the fault of Jeffrey Goldberg of The Atlantic. It was fake news. It put nobody at risk. It was a perfect mission. You know, this shows you the credibility that should be attached to the administration and to Pete Hegseth. But the report speaks for itself. I mean, I remember at the time being horrified about operational details in an insecure context and thinking to myself, it is by the grace of God. I said this to any number of people. It is by the grace of God that we don't have dead airmen or that the mission wasn't compromised. And anybody can look at the report to say that the report by the Pentagon's own inspector general says that the secretary's actions put his people and his mission at risk. And, you know, we need to remember in the context of the, you know, fear and uncertainty and doubt that was put up by the administration. You'll remember Mike Waltz, the then national security advisor, saying that this was somehow Jeffrey Goldberg, the big loser. I mean, this is who these people are. And the American people need to understand that Pete Hegseth controls nuclear weapons. And he makes decisions about whether the sons and daughters of American families are going to go into potentially fatal fights. This all feels like Hollywood until you realize the enormous responsibility that somebody like Pete Hegseth's office entails and the risks associated with somebody who behaves with the character and disposition that he has.
Do you think that Pete Hegseth should resign?
Look, I don't think he ever should have been confirmed in the first place. He is completely out of his depth. You know, as anybody who watches Pete Hegseth know, he is interested in the social media life of a macho, testosterone-laden guy doing push-ups with the troops, and more seriously, eroding the ethics and morality with which the military conducts its actions, which are important for two reasons, for ethical and moral reasons. I still believe we're a moral country, but it's also really important because someday there will be two sailors floating on some wreckage in an ocean with an enemy with munitions around those. And how do we want them to think about that moment? Do they do what we did and waste the two sailors who are you know, floating around on wreckage? There are very good reasons to not be dismissive of ethics and morals and, frankly, honor amongst our warriors.
Absolutely. Congressman Himes, thank you so much for your time.
Thanks a lot.